There is a spectre haunting the Rogan Cider podcast, and it is the spectre of conspiracy.
Well, we'll soon clear that up, right?
Right.
Let's bang through this list here.
Well, it's far too broad a subject. I mean, what are we doing? What's the mind control in what sense?
You could buy into an online program for mind control, learn how to control your mind. It's probably some new age empowerment program.
Well, all cultures, retroactively kind of imbue their people with values. So does that count as mind control? Or is it when you watch an ad on TV and then you go, I do actually want a pizza
Can your
after
mind
all?
be controlled by other people?
Well, hopefully
Well, no,
not.
Could I conspire with you to control someone's mind?
Oh, you can make an effort at it, but I mean, it seems like are people's minds really that important? It's a lot of work to go to. But on the MK Ultra front, Timothy Leary talked about how he had the CIA delivering him 1 million hits of acid in a briefcase in order to distribute them throughout California. Some of that stuff definitely went on.
Well, you push it further and you go Butterfly Project. The Butterfly Project conspiracy, where they have these Hollywood star little girls and boys with their little, I don't know, what they Happy Meal style life, and then they groom them up and sexually manipulate them and just sort of control their brains by telling them what to think, and then usher them into a trampy life of media success.
Is this one of those pedo conspiracies?
No, it's not even pedo. It's just quite simply taking a youth that fits the pattern and then applying techniques to make sure that they have market success, and then
Well, where do you
they
draw
make
the
millions
line?
and millions of dollars. But
Yeah, where do you draw the line between that and good career advice? I mean, if you're going to make millions of dollars
I
in the
think it's
pop
when you
industry,
start calling it a name and then keeping it secret. Well, you call it a butterfly project, and then you keep that idea secret from the people who are in the project.
yeah,
So secretly, hey, we've got a little butterfly project. We're going to take this little worm, this little caterpillar. We're going to cocoon them.
yeah.
I'm going to
Who's
turn
that?
them into this big. We're going to get fucking rich.
Who's that pop star who sung "Oops, I Did It Again"?
Yeah, it's Britney Spears.
Yeah, well,
Great rendition there.
thanks.
Britney
Her dad is a country rock star guy, and she doesn't have majority over her own life because she's got, or according to the tabloids anyway, because she went quote unquote crazy. So you could say something like that, but who knows? Who fucking cares about pop stars anyway? All right, let's go down to the next one. What's next on the list?
We're not saying whether it, whether that just happens that stars go crazy. It's that whether there is a conspiracy there. And I would say, if it is in those people's interest to keep it quiet so that she can hit success, then they will conspire to shape and channel her for their own success. So I would say that conspiracy exists.
But then who are the conspirators in that case? Like her parents?
Managers.
Talent and scouting agency. Like that's literally their job.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think that counts.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, what's next?
Well, we may as well go from there to media sexualization, deliberate sexualization in media.
Well, look at that bloody
Conspiracy to...
yeah. Look at that show that just got advertised, Cuties, with those barely dressed 11-year-olds and those twerk poses on the poster that Netflix just put out. I can't tell what that is, whether that's just some kind of horrific stumble or not. But I mean, media organisations compete against each other, so I can't imagine that they're all coordinated from behind the scenes by some sort of hidden hand. But on the other hand, like there is a huge amount of deviance that comes through the media. What do you call that? Is it a conspiracy or nah?
I would say the market forces alone would lead to that unless there is some sort of moral frame to prevent it. Sexual forces are so strong, especially in youth, and if they have consumption power, then there's going to be products that are targeted to exploit that.
So that's just an economic question, not a kind of set-up trap that's been deliberately manipulated by some shadowy hand.
Conspiracy is that there is a shadowy setup, deliberate, that there's some sort of pedo agenda in media to actually push it because they want that. So I'd say people do exist that do that, but I think that it's overshadowed by the market forces.
Yeah, I think the market forces are a sufficient explanation. All right, what's next on the list?
So it goes on, Pizzagate, kiddie traffic.
Right. So
using the pizza places.
Powerful people get what they want, and some powerful people are pedos, so their needs will be catered to. So that's definitely going on. But I don't think pizzas have got anything to do with it. And I especially don't care about Pizzagate in any meaningful capacity outside of wanting children to be protected.
Right, yeah. I mean, it could be the shoe store gate. Could be anything.
Yeah.
Could be white truck on the back alley.
Exactly.
Well, you go into grooming gangs then.
Those UK grooming gangs?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely going on. The most shocking part about that is the media's complicity in it by refusing to cover it. That's absolutely horrific.
Right, yeah. Conspiracy of the suppression of that media.
Yeah. But I don't think that, or let me phrase it as a question. Do you think that the people in media who didn't cover that story, what was the reason that they didn't do it? Did they not cover it because they were scared of getting called racist? Did they not cover it because their bosses said to them, don't cover the story? Or did they not cover it because some secret hidden hand high up in some secret organisation came down to them and said, you better bloody not cover this story or you're going to sleep with the fishes?
Oh, that's a tough call. If I have to choose one of those. Damn.
I think that media personalities are cowards, so I'm perfectly happy to just take the first explanation in that case. But there definitely are massive gangs predating on people, because that's what they do.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Gross. I want it to be reported on. I want people to be immunised against it.
Yeah, I want the perpetrators to be rounded up and shot, but we don't all get what we want. Okay,
Let's move on.
Yeah, and what's the next one?
Okay, Obamagate spying.
So what is Obamagate spying? That some kind of surveillance conspiracy?
Well, it was when Trump was moving in. He circumvents his own laws, or the US laws, in order to spy on a presidential candidate.
I have no idea whether that's true or not, because I don't trust any of the US media organisations. And half of the media organisations are going to report that it's 100% true, and the other half are going to report that it's 100% false. So I don't know what to do with that information. I mean, do American political parties compete against each other in underhanded ways? Yes, of course they absolutely do, and anyone who doesn't think that needs to open their eyes. So, if true, not shocked.
Okay, let's go to the bigger scale stuff.
Okay.
Let's go to Agenda 21, depopulation.
Yeah, right. So whose interest does it serve to depopulate the planet? What's the cui bono on this one?
I think it must be the planet.
So Gaia
500 million, whatever it was.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, it seems unlikely that the secret conspiracy of illuminated gnomes of Zurich, or whoever it is that's supposedly behind this, are doing it because they're radical environmentalists.
Then you need... Okay. Yeah, this doesn't stand up. Okay, depopulation agendas in general.
Yeah, again, whose interest does it serve? Like, if I'm running a state, I want to have as many people in the state as possible in order to have a powerful state as possible. I want the country to be powerful. So why would I ever allow anybody to try and depopulate
so you have to
my
depopulate
country?
Other states.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a factor of
then you go
state
into
competition.
Illuminati level racism. Okay, well, then you're looking at invisible colleges and Illuminati.
Well, the invisible college is a technical term, which is a different thing. But, I mean, like, there's heaps of different types of Illuminati, right? Or suspected Illuminati, at least.
Think tanks and power groups, of course. They must all socialise and keep their business transactions private.
But this just runs into the standard conspiracy theory problem, which is, if these are secret societies, why do you know what they're called anyway? Like, why do you know about them? Any conspiracy that's capable of... Yeah, well, if it's capable of maintaining itself across hundreds of years, they're not going to be so rubbish at being secret that they're going to allow some chump on the internet to figure out who they are, what their plan is, why they're doing it, and all of that kind of stuff. It's a self-defeating hypothesis.
No, I like to think that they didn't have to worry about that until the internet, and then it got out there, and then they were like, oh, and then it turns out that it was actually good marketing, so now they recruit over it.
Yeah.
And then what they're recruiting for is essentially high-level business relationships with high IQ people who get swept up in, I want to be powerful, rather than I want to be moral.
But the market already solves that problem for you. Just anybody who's wealthy and powerful enough to be of interest, you go talk to them instead. I mean, it's just a Bilderberger type situation, right?
Well, there might be a bit of a culty, ritual-y, Freemasony stuff.
Sure, I mean, why not? All that stuff's fun to do. But I don't necessarily believe that indicates anything in particular about people. I mean, if you look at the history of secret societies in the 18th and 1900s, 1800s and 1900s, throughout Western Europe, they were massive, and there was heaps of them, and they were adhered to by large numbers of everyday men. So where does the spookiness come into it?
Right. And in terms of secret societies being pervasive in other cultures, what's that? The Chinese government's power comes from the military, and the Chinese people's power comes from the Tong, or the secret agreement, secret alliance between brothers. Yeah. So very much their society has endured so many apocalyptic scenarios that in order to survive, they've had to form little secrecy groups, and you could just equate that.
Yeah. Well, this is just the same as the Cosa Nostra in Sicily, right? Same thing.
Anyway, should we move forward?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you could say it about the Vatican. Vatican's quite public, but they're going to have little secret things going on. Vatican conspiracies. If you've got religious groups, you've got power groups. Anytime you've got major power competing with other major power, you're going to have to keep secrets and forge alliances.
Well, one of the major criticisms that Orthodox Christianity makes of the Vatican is that it's primarily a geopolitical organisation, not a spiritual organisation. But anyway, I guess you expect that kind of infighting.
Oof, big one.
Yeah. As for the Invisible College, I'm not willing to comment on that, so let's move on. Yeah.
Industrial schooling.
Yeah, so industrial schooling was invented by the Prussians after they got their asses handed to them by the French. So they invented a format of schooling that would allow for rapid industrialisation. It's probably the right move for them. It didn't sort of save their country, though. And now we still use it, and it hasn't been... it's been slowly modified over time, but God alone knows why we haven't just done a massive reformat of the method of education that we use in the West, because the current one is completely ridiculous. Its only virtue is that it's essentially daycare for teenagers, so your parents can go to work without having to worry about where their kids are at.
And that ties into the delaying childhood, but that just fits, because it was good for industry.
Yeah. Again, economic factors are complete to explain that.
Okay, geopolitical issues and false flags. We'll start with the sinking of the Lusitania.
Right. Well,
or you can lump them all together. Sinking of Lusitania, Pearl Harbor, Gulf of Tonkin.
Well, sinking of Lusitania, I mean, that definitely happened. And afterwards it was shown that it was carrying military supplies to the front, even though theoretically it was a purely civilian vessel. And that's what brought the US into the war. So that definitely occurred. Pearl Harbor can neither confirm nor deny. No idea what actually happened there, but it is extremely suspicious that after the sinking of the Bismarck, all of the battleships in the US Army got sunk, but none of the carriers did, because the carriers were away somewhere else when Pearl Harbor happened. So no proof of wrongdoing. Gulf of Tonkin I'm not hugely familiar with, but as far as I'm aware, that's pretty straightforward. I don't
pretend that the Vietnamese bombed the ship and then starts the Vietnam War, or allows for public support.
Yeah, so the takeaway from that is that peace movements are redundant. Like, the state can always manipulate the people into a war if they want to, and it's quite easy. Okay, what was the next one? Proxy wars or something?
JFK.
Yeah, see, the Pseudodoxology podcast has just released a investigation into JFK, and I really want to listen to that. And if you're interested in that issue, you should go listen to that podcast instead of this one, because I don't know enough about JFK. Seems obvious that there's something fishy going on. No idea what it is.
All right, banking cartels funding both sides of wars.
I mean, you want to make money. I think a deeper issue is proxy wars.
Yeah, market forces again.
Yeah.
Why would proxy wars need a conspiracy?
You don't need a conspiracy for them, but proxy wars are a more real and present danger than the fact that banks fund both sides of conflicts. You see this happen in conflict theory in Africa. People talk about how you can have a warlord who, because all of the military things are just available to you, you can have a warlord who says, this country has a certain amount of these resources, and I will pay you back if I can borrow this much money. And then they use that money to buy a military, use the military to take over the control of the resources, exploit the resources, keep the profits, and then pay back the loan. And then because multiple people can do that, it keeps small resource-rich states in a state of persistent warfare of the different warlords against each other. But anyway, that's called the resource curse, by the way.
All right. What's the recent conspiracy with the corporate investment in Chinese industry?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a conspiracy behind that, or if it's just a massive blunder, or if it's just blind profit seeking.
The Wall Street concealment of the inability to extract funds and industry out of China, given the nationalization from the backdoor policy.
Well, it definitely does seem like American capitalism is a blind beast, entirely hungry for profit and completely incapable of thinking in the long term.
Let's go to the moon. Okay, the moon lights.
Moon lights?
Yeah, the neon light show, the flicker that happened right before the moon landing, and occasionally gets caught by amateur astronomers, indicating that there's some sort of either strange phenomenon or some sort of light, and because it's in a particular frequency range, it's thought to be like an artificial light source.
Never heard of it. It'd be cool if there was like a massive moon base that had been built on the other side of the moon secretly, though.
The moon origin.
Yeah, there are multiple theories of how the moon came about. which ones of them are conspiratorial and which ones are like unscientific? Or is this one of those it's a massive spacecraft ones?
None of them are conspiracies.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what does it matter? I mean, who conspired? I mean, it's so far back. Maybe it was just outright. They were just like, hey, we're dropping this moon off.
Yeah.
And they didn't conspire. They just said, hey, but there was no one here to go, oh, yeah, we don't want your moon.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Thanks, aliens, for parking a massive moon spacecraft.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Aliens then. Let's carry on with aliens. Anunnaki, alien meddling, changing of human DNA.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's quite deep conspiracies here. I mean, I just find aliens a kind of boring conspiracy because they never show up. But it does touch on, like, deep history conspiracies, and they're fairly entertaining, so I'll give them that. But again, need some evidence. People who say they know what is going on but are incapable of providing a single shred of evidence become pretty suspicious. You got to be skeptical of that.
The human history suppression, the giant skulls and the ancient civilizations being suppressed for national reasons because it supports particular worldviews and particular modes of science or things like that.
Well, that certainly adds a certain amount of romance to your life if you're capable of believing that kind of nonsense.
Can you imagine competing nations putting their agreement to stay silent about the giant skulls aside?
Oh, God. What a shit show that meeting would be.
Okay. I guess we can move on to the reptilians then.
Yeah, so this is David Icke's conspiracy, right? Or David Icke, or whatever his name is. Yeah. I mean, look, if your life is so boring that you need to believe that there's interdimensional child molesting reptilian ghosts that are in another dimension that are meat hooking kids out of this dimension in order to, drain their spiritual essence for their ongoing immortality tasks and trying to corrupt our world in this kind of massive infernal hellish crusade against God.
Soul harvest.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus, you must be really bored.
Well, if you're doing that, what's the solution?
Yeah, it's one of the Black Iron prison conspiracies. Congratulations, you're completely powerless in a hell world. Don't know why you would choose to believe that. Seems dumb.
Earn your way out with virtue?
Yeah, but that's a Black Iron prison conspiracy. There is no way out. It's like the most hardcore forms of Gnosticism, right? Everything's innately evil, and you're here forever. Okay, thanks. Not a particularly rewarding belief system, in my opinion.
It's enormous. There's so many different tracks. It's actually quite fascinating.
Well, the upside...
I don't find I can conclude much wisdom from it. Like the lesson for me is to be virtuous and be powerful. That's it. Yeah.
And we were going to do that anyway, so whatever. The only upside I can say for all of those ones is that you're allowed to have whatever variety you like. Like, you don't have to agree with anyone about them. So they do allow some expression of creativity. So, they have that going for them. They're not 100% pointless.
Well, it seems like just an adjustment of the extreme Gnosticism, just putting on a sci-fi twinge.
Yeah, basically. I mean, there's a long history of those varieties of beliefs. And the fact that, let me say this, the idea that there are people who don't know the intellectual history of that tradition of beliefs whilst being completely invested inside them is a source of skepticism for me. If you have a belief system which is almost a direct copy of another belief system that people believed 500 years ago, but you don't know about the one of 500 years ago, it's like, okay, well, how much investigation could you possibly have done into it? Anyway, whatever, let's move on to the next one.
Well, let's go back to religion then. We'll say suppression of biblical texts, conspiracy of suppression of biblical teachings. You got the power of the papacy, and like Mary Magdalene's books and all those other strange books that keep appearing, coming out of caves.
Yeah, I mean, those Gnostic Bibles that were found in the desert just after the Second World War, they were thought to be massively revelatory. And then when the scholars investigated them, turned out they basically just confirmed most of the stuff that we already thought about Gnosticism anyway. So, failed on that one. And religions compete with each other, and they also have internal competitions. I mean, look at the Council of Trent and all of that.
Okay.
Not Trent, Nicaea, I mean. Anyway, yep.
Okay, there's two here. There's the Jewish conspiracy and the coordinated global elite. They sort of overlap.
Yeah. So the Jewish... every conspiracy seems to have a version of it which has got Jews in it and a version of it which doesn't have Jews in it. So... the idea that Jews are somehow all in on some kind of like global world planning conspiracy is so farcical, I find it hilarious. Except for one thing, which is that the Jews always seem to cop the actual punishment for people believing this nonsense is the only downside of it. So, yeah. I mean, what are you going to say about it? And then aside from that, the idea that there's a coordinated global elite I think is nonsense, because I don't think that's, or what's the correct way to say this? I think the world is large enough that there's no way to unify a political system of control over the entire surface of the globe. Even with instant communication, there's no method that can be used to do that. And if you don't believe that that's the case, as I don't, then you're left with competing powers. And if you've got competing powers, then there's no unified control. So that's my take on it.
Q.
Did you want to put in your 2 cents on that one?
Oh, I just couldn't concur more. It's like I compete with my friends.
Yeah.
And they disagree. Sorry, they disagree with me all the time. Like,
yeah.
I mean, and I try and keep secrets. So, you tell a story about a lover, and then next thing you know, someone's told a story, and you're like, oh, what? Or the story changes, like in Chinese whispers.
Yeah.
I can't expect groups to be coordinated. I expect some little, even if it was some, hey, we're going to do this, and we need to do, because there actually are alien UFOs. So there you go. We have to go to that one.
Yeah.
And so we have to suppress that information because that technology can't get out to the people, because we can't have the people inventing that. And then 2 countries go to war, and they're like, fuck, it'd be great if our people could invent UFOs, and then we could actually compete. Like,
yeah.
Just a crossover.
Competitive dynamics rule out the majority of conspiracies just straight out the box.
Okay. Well, then you've got suppression of UFO stuff. You've got high-tech UFO suppression. What do you got there?
Well, so
I just ruled it out, basically.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's nonsense. But the part of the reason why is because the usual justification for why the government is secretly hiding all of the UFO tech that they've either been trading for or been gifted or discovered off a fallen craft or whatever it is because they don't think people can handle it. Well, excuse me, but since 1900 until now, human life has gone through radical technological transformations. So the idea that we can't handle it, you would have to point to the way that things are going now and saying, oh, we're failing to handle it. But the point is that we're already going through the transformation. So that's a confounding factor.
Well, it goes beyond, because it goes to the fantasy of the anti-grav technology, this space-folding UFOs, and they've got the technology and they're going off-world and creating other bases and other places. And the main focus is just to prevent other competing parties from developing that technology.
Yeah, if your alien theory is just a copy of an angels and demons theory from the past, except you've swapped out the name angel or demon for alien, then you get 0 marks for creativity from me.
Well, okay, change it. All the technology is actually just human-made, and they just don't want that technology to be discovered, so they keep that technology off-world. And they just prevent people from discovering it.
All the states are already accelerating their technological advancement as much as they possibly can. I mean, what do you think DARPA does, right? Advanced Research Projects exists for a reason, because they're all trying to keep as much of it as they can under wraps. And what's happened recently? Well, China's nicked huge quantities of black research that the US has been doing. So if they can't even keep their secrets from their main geopolitical competitor, I mean, this seems unlikely that there's a secret source from which they're digging it all up.
Okay, well, that leaves only... Well, we didn't touch Q, but that's just like the internet bolt hole where anonymous people try to patch together their ideals and dreams with a bit of knitted in political intrigue, and then get a lot of it right and then push their own agendas, it seems like. It's
a meta-analysis, or a meta lack of analysis, perhaps.
Right, give us a rundown on transhumanism.
Well, transhumanism suffers from a similar problem as the alien theory, which is that it just renames. Instead of heaven, you have utopia, transhuman utopia. Instead of virtue, you have technology. And if you invest enough in one, then eventually you get to the other. So similarly, it's a renaming scheme. But the deeper problem with transhumanism is that it's based on the misunderstanding that humanity has not always been massively shaped by the technologies that we invent right from the get-go. So the idea that at some point in the future, technology is going to have a massive influence on us, and it hasn't yet, is false, because, first we shape our tools and thereafter they shape us. So the idea that technology is outside the human is already false. So then when you go to the future in your imagination and say, there's going to be this time when technology changes us and we're all going to be completely different than we are now. Yeah, but that's already always been happening. So I just don't find it particularly explanatory.
And nor is it conspiratorial.
No. Although it's good fuel for conspiracies, because it lets you, sideways magic into your conspiracy by pretending that it's technology.
Water fluoridation.
Yeah, I like strong teeth. Good.
Corruption of scientific institutions.
Well, all institutions are inherently corrupt. It's just a question of trying to hammer the corruption out of them as much as you possibly can, and scientific ones are no different to that. Some scientists like to flatter themselves that they're so rational they're immune to corruption, but obviously that's nonsense. Is there a specific conspiracy about which scientific institutions are being corrupted, by whom, and for what purpose?
Links to the industrial schooling. It's the fluoride conspiracy, in that topical fluoride is beneficial, but dietary fluoride actually can have a damaging effect on developmental neural tissue and early childhood in general. And that it was used in Russian and then Nazi prisoners of war camps in high doses, because apparently in high doses fluoride can result in docility.
Well, an overdose of anything can have negative effects. And another popular method of docility that was used in the Gulag is shooting someone in the back of the head, which sounds way easier than trying to engineer some system of secretly delivering fluoride to people.